Well, hello. It's time for another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is the show where I talk about the fountain pens and inks that I've been using throughout the week. So, let's dive into it. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And I'm going to rehash one topic from last week, and I've got a couple other topics, and don't worry, we've got a rainbow of colors again, the way it should be with fountain pens. So, let's dive into it. So, from left to right, I have the Aurora Duocart, Markant 165, Penol Ambassador Special, Pilot Fermo, Pilot Vanishing Point, Wing Sung 699, Kaweco Dia, Pelikan M1000, Pelikan M800, and a Pelikan 400NN. As always, I'll be doing my writing samples in my Bomo art journal, and somebody noticed that I forgot to turn on my lights when I did the Penol Ambassador Special review, so I made a special point of turning them on tonight. So, let's take a look at the pens. Okay, a little different compared to the last few weeks. I actually am filming this on the correct day. So my first pen is the Aurora Duocart. This is the modern version. I should say modern version 1 because they have refined modern version 1 and now modern version 2 is out. But the nice thing about buying modern version 1 is you got some vintage packaging with it. Now, of course, the problem with vintage packaging is it looks cool, it smells cool, and then what do you do with it? It's been sitting in my basement in a box. So this is the Aurora Duocart. This was modeled, should I say modeled? Inspired by the Aurora 88, which is a wonderful pen. Only this one was meant to work with cartridges, and it was meant for students. And I like this. It's a very comfortable pen. But then again, I like the vintage Aurora 88 also. The ink I have in this is supposed to be one of the truly black inks. This is, whoops, I forgot the R. Aurora Black. I did a video a few years ago where I compared several black inks, and I was kind of trying to figure out, what did I want to use as my daily writer type of black ink. And I know you're not supposed to go into these things with a bias, but I really wanted this one to win. But it didn't. It didn't do as well as Lamy Black on the lower cost paper, and also would bleed through more than Lamy Black or Pelikan Black. But I think you can see it's very nice black. And if you go to last week's Pens in Use, I have a whole page of black inks if you're into that kind of thing. My next pen, actually I didn't notice this till just tonight, but bears some similarities. This is from the other side of the Iron Curtain. This would have been made in East Germany. So this is a Markant 165. Also with a semi-hooded nib. I had to do a little nib work on this one when I did its original first impression. And then it's just been kind of sitting there. I've been, using other pens and haven't touched this one. And you saw how well it started up after probably a week or two of just sitting there. So this is a Markant 165. This is Rohrer and Klingner. Verdura, right? I think so. Might be remembering that wrong, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's when I said I really like Aurora Black, this is a green I really like. It's just a very deep, rich green. Years ago, I had a bottle of Parker Penman, was it Emerald? Anyway, they're green, and I Just thought it was such a wonderful, perfect color. And it was rare for me to go off the Parker Quink Black. And wow, it was just so wonderful. But of course, you can't get Penman ink anymore. Well, I guess you can on eBay, but it's expensive. And, you know, inks come and go. I just reviewed this pen this week. This is a Penol Ambassador Special. This is a Danish pen. So made by a bunch of retired Vikings. I think Danish people are more fun when they're not trying to raid villages and stuff. Penol Ambassador Special. The ink is one of my favorites. This is, oops, I was going to write the name first. Callifolio. Aurora. Just a very nice, kind of off orange. If you take a look at Callifolio's line of inks, they have a number of different colors, but they seem to cluster in certain families. They're also supposed to be very good for vintage pens, and I know from personal experience they're easy to clean out. On that note, I didn't grab the pens in question, but you all know what they are. So a couple of weeks ago, I was going to mention this last week, but then my other topic came up and I forgot all about it. But last week I was making or a couple weeks ago, because they graduated the 24th, we had our graduation here. I always write a personal note and fold it up real nice for my students who give me an announcement. So I have a Noodlers Conrad that has a nice stub nib in it. And I put this in it because I thought, well, that'll be kind of nice. A nice green color because I like the color green. And then it's got sparkles in it. So I thought that'll look kind of cool. So, of course, to get sparkles, you have to have something to sparkle. And handling this, I've kind of knocked the sparkles around. But they're nice coppery colored sparkles. Most of the sparkly inks I own have either gold or silver sparkles. So I was pretty excited when I bought this bottle. And I clogged that Noodler's Conrad with it before I finished the cards. Nothing I could do could get that pen writing again. So, probably foolishly, then I went to a Pilot Parallel to do the last few cards. And that clogged after the second one. It was at that point that I gave up on sparkly inks, so a few of my graduating students did not get a sparkling ink, and then it was a merry adventure cleaning those two pens. The Conrad cleaned out pretty easily. The Parallel, I tried using the squeeze bulb. I could not get water to flow through it for anything, and I actually had to pull out the ultrasonic cleaner and run it over and over and over till I got the sparkles to move enough that I could finally flush the rest of it out of it. And so I'm never using this ink again unless it's in a glass pen. And it's going to be a glass dip pen because, wow, that's a clogger. And I don't use sparkling inks very often. I've been very close to using this one, which was, Giabon Blue Ocean, or Ocean Blue, or something like that. But for whatever, I decided on the other one, and, I don't have that trouble with the Giabon inks, or, I guess that's the only other sparkling inks I've tried. I haven't tried the Diamine, and I don't know who else makes sparkling inks. But you kind of see the problem. You have to shake them up, and then keep them shaken up, and, as they sit in the pen and the sparkles settle out, and it just seemed like more trouble than they're worth. They're fun for a few special things, and that's it. And, yeah, that Dea Trementis, I won't be using that again. And I do actually kind of like Dea Trementis inks. They've got some nice colors, and the scented thing is totally useless, but kind of cool. So, a little sad about that, but oh well. All right, let's move on with the pens. So I did a Platinum Curidas review. It's been a while, and the company I bought it from is working on getting me a replacement. But anyway, it had a cracked feed, so I decided, I'll do a video later in the week about retractable pens, and I said then that I'm not a fan of this pen, or the other Pilot. I have a Pilot Vanishing Point as well, and a viewer suggested that offered to me on loan to try some different nibs in them. And I have to say, this one is the 1.0 millimeter nib. I have to say I do like these pens a lot better with the broader nibs. I don't care for Pilot's fine nibs in these pen, apparently. So this is a Pilot Fermo, which is discontinued. I mean, that's kind of nice looking writing. And this is Parker Quink. Washable blue. Which turns out to be kind of a nice color. And this stub nib is perfect. You can do your regular everyday writing with it, and yet it provides enough visual interest. It's stubby enough and, broad one way but narrow the other way. That it really adds a lot to your writing. And I will concede that it's still uncomfortable to hold. I don't like the clip, but it's so much more fun to write with. I've actually been kind of enjoying writing with these pens, so am I going to be getting myself 2 new nibs? I don't know. Have to think about it. But the Vanishing Point, of course, he sent me a broad nib, so I just picked this one to have the broad because it was gold colored like the nib that was in it, which was steel. So this is the Pilot. Ooh, this ink looks very different on this paper than what I've been seeing all on the other paper I've used. So this is a Pilot Vanishing Point. Broad. And the ink in it is Kyo-no-oto. Let's hear me butcher some Japanese. And I mean the language, not the people. That's mean to butcher people. I just realized how that sounded. Sakuranezumi. Which is something to do with how cherry blossoms look against a cloudy sky. Living in North Dakota, I don't see too many cherry blossoms. I see crab apples sometimes, and regular apples, and I see choke cherry. So I can't guarantee that that's accurate, but it is a very nice kind of muted purple color. And again, a lot more fun to write with that nib than it is with the fine. So go figure. Almost out of ink. My controversial Wing Sung 699. I had a lot of very unhappy comments about my review of the Wing Sung 699. This one is this a fine one? No, this is the medium one. The ink in it is part of why it's almost written down. I'm finding I really enjoy writing with this ink. It's very nice shading ink, and in this pen, which the nib is nothing special. Krishna Causal. So I'm sure this pen will not be here next week. I've just about have this one written dry. My Pilot Custom 823, which is taking a break right now, but I think will be written dry very quickly because it's almost empty. The other Wing Sung has a bit more ink in it because I like that color, but dang, I just started really enjoying this ink. I don't know what hit me. I mean, isn't that pretty? Alrighty. My Kaweco Dia 2. I was involved in a discussion on, I think it was Fountain Pen Network, about whether to buy the Kaweco Dia 2 or a Platinum 3776. I recommended the 3776. I pointed out, I own both, and this is almost never out, which is true. Not that it's a bad pen. It's actually a classier feeling pen and sounding pen than the Platinum, but I don't know, I just don't enjoy it as much. And this nib is very broad, kind of stubbish. One of the things I learned, because I'm going to be starting a video series, or actually a video soon, I'll just be filming it in a series. I'll get to that here in a minute. But about shading inks, and a wet pen like this is actually not good for showing shading. Which may be part of why that Wing Sung does so well. But an ink that doesn't shade really well, but has a nice color. Oh, like a, I don't know, Private Reserve Avocado or Tanzanite or something. I think this would be a great pen for showing that off. So since I brought up the shading ink thing, let me just roll over to the side here for a minute. Oh, where are they? Oh, buried. If you saw what I'm working with right now, you can tell I've been outdoors and not indoors. Tomorrow's supposed to be very, very hot, so I may get indoors and work on the indoors a bit. Or I may take a ride in my air-conditioned car somewhere. So, what I'll be doing, I think this is the pens I'm going to use, but I'm going to be filming a video about my top shading inks. I don't know if I'll do top 10 or exactly how many I'll do, but anyway, I've got, let me try and remember here, fine, a broad, and a medium. And I know I have some other Lamy nibs, stub type nibs, so I'm going to replace this one with a stub type of nib and just show the inks off with these pens. I don't even have to give them a good fill. I'm content if it's just a mediocre fill. And, but, just to show off the shading. So, I can film a day that I film another video. I can film an entry of, oh, here is, I don't know, what is a good shading ink? Black Swan and Australian Rose. Here is Patchy Sunset. I don't want to give the whole show away now. But then at the end of summer or whenever I get done, I'd then be able to edit all those together and, do them all with the same pen. Same pens. Alright, so I'm going to bring the pen case back over here for a minute. I was asked about the Pelikan M1000 versus the M800. I just wanted to point out size difference here. You have your M1000, you have your M800. There's an M600, which I do not own. Then there's an M400, which this is an older model. This is a 400NN, but at least it gives you some idea of scale. And then there's an M200, which I used to own one, but I actually gave it to a pen pal. So I no longer own it. But it's, even smaller than this and has a surprisingly nice steel nib. And they've had some interesting ones too, like there's an M300 Red that I used to really want, but never bought. So This puts their size in comparison. Nibs are gold, I think, on all but the M200. All piston fillers, which is kind of sweet. If you like pistons. If you don't like pistons, it's probably not so sweet. One of the things that really stands out to me, let's see if I can light that better. When I use this green background, the pens just are underexposed. Or overexposed. But I think one of the things that stands out to me is just how honkin' big that nib is in the M1000. And that's really what I enjoy about the pen, is how honkin' big that nib is. And we'll see what it can do here in just a minute. So the M1000 is the biggest of the bunch. I'm boring. I got the same finish on all of them. There have been a few of finishes for the M800 I've found interesting, but not interesting enough to actually buy one. Plus, the special finishes are more expensive. No, M1000. Excuse me. My allergies have been kind of going nuts this week. So this is a medium nib. Looking back on it, I kind of wish I'd gotten a fine, but that was several $100s more, so that wasn't going to happen. So this is Pelikan 4001 Dunkelgrün. And I think you can see why I like this pen. Because it's very flexible nib. This nib is fun. The pen is a little bigger around than I like. But I'll put up with it for that nib. And that nib would look out of proportion on the M800. Let's be real here. But it just blew my mind when I first got this pen how much bigger the nib is than the M800 nib. So this is my Pelikan M800. A different pen pal sent me a sample of ink to try in it. He knew I like yellow inks, so this is going to be a yellow ink, and I knew right away what pen to put it in. Then when I had the question about how these two compared, I was like, yeah, we'll kill two birds with one stone. So this is a Pelikan. I like how this ink looks. I mean, yellow inks are generally a little pale. But, man, I just like them. They're so happy. And this is a brand of ink I don't have experience with. I've had one bottle of Montblanc Black that's almost empty. And that's about it. I guess they have a big range of colors. I just have never explored it. But I knew I wanted it in this pen because this is a wet pen. But one difference, this pen doesn't have the flex that M800 does. Or M1000, sorry. Now the M1000, when I write no pressure, comes out a little narrower. And with full pressure, of course, it comes out quite a bit broader. Okay, my last pen, we won't compare nibs. This is a much older pen. It's probably from the 1950s. It's a Pelikan 400 NN. And I did a review of that a long time ago. You'll find it down in the video description. And, it has, I won't call it a flex nib, but it's a very nice nib. I think it's a fine. Doesn't say on it. I feel like it was a fine, though, when I reviewed it. I could be making that up. This has another Kyo-no-oto ink. I enjoy these Kyo-no-oto inks. I don't know why, but I do. I don't really know how to pronounce this one either. Ochiguri-iro. I'm thinking almost all of them have had Iro at the end, except for the Sakuranezumi that I used earlier. And I'm getting so close to running through this Bomo art journal. Just have to use my little paper clip here to hold the pages down. So this one's nice, no pressure. Very different. It's a very nice pen to write with. And actually, these are relatively common if you're looking for a vintage pen. So those are the pens and inks that I've been using this week. So like I usually do, I just thought I'd talk about a couple other little topics. One of the topics that's come up I've been noticing as a trend. And it's not just my channel, it's happening on a lot of channels. It's not just a fountain pen channel thing, it's all over. But you get these comments that say, great job, or want to be friends. And they're from commenters who first joined YouTube in like 2006 or 2007. If you look at my channel, this channel was actually created in 2000, I think it was 2007. So I've actually been on YouTube for a long time. With only 4,000 subscribers to show for it, but that's another story. But anyway, I had some suggestions last week about why I don't have any more than 4,000 subscribers, but that's another topic for another day. But the point is that, you look at the channel and they haven't made any videos and really have nothing there. So it's spam, obviously. And they're putting the same comment on lots of different channels. Sometimes they don't realize they've done it on your channel already, so you get 3 or 4 comments from them that say the same exact thing. You're like, yeah, I don't think you were impressed by my video. I think you're just a robot. But anyway, and then a lot of them are starting to be deleted by YouTube. I know because on the creator side of YouTube, I can go to a screen that just puts all the comments on all my videos, and I can just click, show all comments I haven't responded to. Something I just learned about this year. Yeah. But one of the tabs on it is spam. And, occasionally one of your comments gets kicked in there just because YouTube's algorithm thinks it's spam. And then I can unkick it, and then I respond. But these have been all kicked in there, and I was at 19 spam comments, and now I'm down to 17. So some of these channels have been deleted. But what I've been wondering with these comments is, what's the game? How are they actually making money at this? And I have not figured that out. So if you have an idea, let me know. My hypothesis is they're going to old inactive users that created a YouTube account and then never did anything with it, and they're able to break into their account somehow. So I suppose if I'd never done anything with this account after creating it, then maybe I'd be one of the spammers right now without realizing it. So anyway, if you know anything about that, I would love to hear a comment, because I can't figure it out. Other than I'm not the only YouTuber who's remarked on it. Several of us have noticed it. Bigger channels than mine have noticed it. I thought it was worth bringing up. Let me make sure. I've got a couple of things here. One of the things I thought was worth bringing up, I was going to bring it up last week, but then, with current events, with the protests and everything, I thought it could wait. But I want to bring it up this week. So, true story, June 4th, 2019. I'm sorry. June 4th, 1919, so 101 years ago approximately, Congress passed the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. And then it was ratified by August 18th, 2020, so a little over 100 years ago. So I'll probably mention that again in August if I remember. But, so it took 36 states to ratify and get it added to the Constitution, and I'm happy to say North Dakota was one of those original 36 that ratified it. This amendment, of course, was the one that gave women the right to vote. Yeah, it wasn't until 1920 that this country decided that, oh, maybe we should let half the population of the United States vote. And, if you know history, women have been second-class citizens in this country for most of its history. And there's still a lot of problems. I mean, we talk right now, police violence and racism, not just police, is more in the news. But we can't forget that women still face a lot of obstacles. It's not too long ago, the 70s, we tried to ratify the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, to say that women are equal to men. And almost got there. By then we had 50 states, so we needed 38 of them to ratify it. And we didn't get there because a few holdouts in one part of the country, weirdly enough, wouldn't ratify it. And now there's some movements in, like the last time legislature only meets every 2 years here in North Dakota, there were some people trying to get us to withdraw our ratification. And some states actually have done that. I know Idaho was one of them. South Dakota is one of them. Surprise. But, so it's still not ratified. And, it's kind of interesting when you think about it. The 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote in this country, the states continued to ratify, the ones that were part of the Union. Hawaii and Alaska never ratified it because they weren't states at the time this amendment happened. But the last state to ratify the amendment was Mississippi. There's a surprise. March 22nd, 1984. Now let that sink in. They actually didn't want to ratify it. They voted against it back in 1920. And again, most of the states that were late to the party were neighbors of Mississippi. So I apologize to any of my viewers who live in that part of the world, but that's history. That's just how it is. So, ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, still has limited hope. I'm not sure what's going to happen now that some time has passed. Almost 50 years now, I guess. Phyllis Schlafly, who, if you want to read about interesting people, there you go, was a driving force to not have it ratified. So, she died, a year or two ago. But her poisonous legacy lives on in a lot of forms. So I wanted to get into one other topic. I don't want to rehash my topics from last week because I said what I wanted to say, and I don't want to beat it to death. But there was something that came up last week. And we are putting a new roof on the clinic. For now, though, the clinic's closed, so if you get sick, you're going to have to go to the hospital. And I don't have insurance that will let me go to this clinic over here that the roof blew off anyway. I have to go to the hospital with my insurance. So another topic for another day if we talk about health insurance here in the United States, because, oh, baby. But anyway, last week in my discussion of Black Lives Matter and all of that, I talked about a gentleman named Deputy Chief Todd Osmundson, who decided to do a little freelance undercover work during the Fargo protests. Got himself in some trouble. He was suspended for a week, and then he ended up resigning from the force. Well, this week's June 10th edition of the Dickinson Press, and probably this is in the Fargo Forum as well, I put a link to the Dickinson Press, but it's hidden behind a paywall. Surprise. But I've got the paper copy here. Had a nice, long article about him and some of the things he said and realized as he's had time to think after everything went down. And I thought he had a lot of good things to say. So I want to just outline it. So I started by writing notes, but then I got lazy and just started highlighting in the article. So it'll be a combination of both. But anyway, one of the things he complains about right away is that some of his fellow officers immediately turned on him because he was seen in this protest. And there's actually Black Lives Matter protesters or I should say activists, who want criminal charges pressed against him, although no names were given in the article. As I mentioned last week, that was not a good look to have an officer undercover like that, because there have been accusations, and I don't think we found too many for sure, but definitely some suspicions of police actually having people at these protests as agitators or as spies. So bad look for the Fargo Police Department that actually there was an officer. But now he's talking a little bit more about the police department in Fargo. He's talking about what he called deep-seated biases in the police department toward people of color. And one of the statistics he mentioned was that there were 180 officers there for enforcement of the law, and only 4 officers that were focused on community policing, which is that building up relationships, dealing with the issues in the community rather than necessarily law enforcement. And he said that we need to get those numbers closer together anyway. We need to get the trust of young people, which, true. He also said that he had messaged the chief of police to suggest that law enforcement march with and show support for the protesters. And I was going to write down the name of the police department, but I forgot to do that. I did see a few reports of police departments doing exactly that. Now, they're not going to take the side of the rioting or anything, but, to say, yes, there's a problem and we want to be part of the solution. That's a good PR move. Whether it leads to any change or not, that's open to question, but it's a good PR move. Apparently didn't happen, but something he's thinking about. And he also says that, again, surprise? No. Before the protests, he really disliked Colin Kaepernick. That's the football player who was famous for kneeling during the national anthem. And he believed that Black Lives Matter was organized crime. And in his words, Native Americans were drunks that deserved an extra twist on the handcuff. And he admits that in this article, that is how he viewed things. So I'm going to do a few more quotes from him. Like here, this was a good one. We get ingrained in bias and profiling. Even today, if I'm pulling up and I see a 30-year-old white man in a sedan with 4 new car tires, I don't think anything of it. I go 1 block further and see a black man in a Cadillac with 4 new tires. I wonder, where did he steal those from? Osmundson said. The reason he didn't speak out against bias in the Fargo Police Department before his resignation was because of the rank-and-file structure built into law enforcement. We're basically trained not to break from rank and file ever. When that one officer was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, 3 other officers were right there, said nothing. One of them, admittedly, I think he'd been on the job 4 days, and I feel bad for him because he should have said something, but I know how it is when you're new and you're scared to say anything. Or I think of in Buffalo where that 75-year-old man was knocked over, and one of the police officers, you can see him going down to help the guy, and one of the other officers grabs him by the back and just kind of gives him a shove forward. That's exactly what he's talking about here. Osmundson said he fell prey to bias because as a police officer he saw so much of the darker side of life. And he points out in the next paragraph how it gives you a very unbalanced perspective. And you think about it. I'll just tell you my own personal experience. I used to be a volunteer EMT. For reasons I don't want to get into right now, I quit doing that. But one of the things that was hard for me, you saw Turtle Lake if you watched my driving video. I know a lot of people don't watch them, but I used to live in Turtle Lake. And one of the things, being a volunteer EMT, is I really saw the dark side of that town. As a teacher, I'm sorry, but people are often on their best behavior with us. Yes, you get those few that you're just like, oh boy. But for the most part, we do see the better side. And, as an EMT, you're not dealing with people when they're at their best. You're like, oh, we're going to take this clear case of spousal abuse to the hospital. That kind of stuff. So police have that even in spades because look what they are dealing with. I get to take the spouse that's been abused. The police get to go deal with the abuser. Our souls that were once loving become hard, Osmundson said. We need to balance those interactions. Then we can maintain peace officers throughout their careers, and they won't have deep-seated biases toward people of color. True. That's how you get jaded and hardened, is when you're seeing just that ugly side. I didn't understand until this weekend. At the protest, I started seeing Kaepernick jerseys. That's when my daughter said that kneeling had nothing to do with Jarek Chauvin, who's the guy in Minneapolis. Osmundson's daughter, Nicole, described the changes she's seen in her father in a Facebook post. I have seen him admit to his past biases. I have seen him willing to voice this new understanding despite backlash. Most of us have never had the guts to say, I was wrong. True. But I've witnessed him do this every single day. For those of you questioning if it's genuine, I hope you continue to hold my family accountable. For those of you who don't understand the change in heart or think that this is a betrayal of police, I hope you will continue to listen and learn from others. I hope you will take the time to hear my dad's heart. Caring for law enforcement and realizing police reform is needed are not polar opposites. Remember, this is a guy who's been on the force for 31 years. When he heard that the protesters were marching toward the police headquarters, which I don't know how many stations that they have in Fargo. It's a smaller police department. It's not like Minneapolis at all. It's what we've got here. But what was in his mind, of course, as he points out, was the police station in Minneapolis that was burned to the ground by protesters. That's what he was thinking when they were coming towards it. I was concerned with the peaceful march in Fargo when it stopped becoming a march and turned into a protest against the police department. Then every officer thought it was burn the police department down, Osmundson said. When the protesters arrived at headquarters, he grabbed a camera to photograph the crowd. But when he focused the lens, he saw faces he knew, his daughter's friends. And I thought, why are these kids here and angry at the police department? My daughter had friends out there. Something broke inside him when he realized he didn't understand what was happening, he said. And then it talks about him visiting with, I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, his friend Claude Vyomugu and others, all young, all black, and all Fargoans. Of course, this guy has to do all the talking when I can't pronounce his name. Vyomugu explained why the May 30th riot never should have happened. Take a long history of racial profiling at a skirmish line with police in riot gear, holding truncheons and shooting tear gas, and the law enforcement presence alone was provocation, Vyomugu said. I told officers that day, stay calm and people will go home. Officers were the ones putting anger into the people. I'm not a police officer, so I don't know. It doesn't say what this Claude Vyomugu does. I don't think he's a police officer, though. Anyway, Osmundson believes the riot could have been prevented. If we had been down there personally engaging protesters, they would have gone home, he said. 18 people arrested, Osmundson said. I'd like to ask them, have you ever harmed a police officer or thrown a rock like that before? I don't think all of those people had launched a rock at an officer before. Probably true. Now, part of that, when you're in a mob, suddenly you get what they call mob mentality. But that's a good point. And, what caused this mob anger to get riled up like that? When you go in like they're enemy combatants, that's a very different attitude from how you go in if you say these are citizens. We want to keep them and our city safe. The problem is police are pretty much feeling we are supposed to be the community, but we end up being cops and we tell you what to do because we know what's best. But I'm committed to fix that, Osmundson said. I was them for 31 years and I back them and they're wonderful, but they're ignorant and now they need to be educated. So I just found that interesting. I think in my talk of him last week, he came across sounding as sort of a villain. And, it sounds like he really had his eyes opened. I know those times don't happen very often for most of us, but when they do, those are painful realizations that, oh, wow. Not only have I been wrong, I've been really wrong. And you end up with lasting change. I've mentioned before that my political ideas have swung quite a lot from what they were when I was young. My religious views have definitely taken a major swing. Other things, have stayed the same. But, on the whole, I am not the person I was. And I think that's important as we keep growing and changing. If you're the same person you were 10 years ago, what's wrong with you? We should be willing to look at evidence and our new experiences and change our mind. Sometimes it's very painful and very sudden, like it was with him. I think for a lot of us, it's generally a lot more slow and gradual. But the important thing is to be willing to change and accept new ideas and accept that, oh, I was wrong. And of course also know sometimes, oh, I'm right, because sometimes you are. So anyway, because of that, I just felt that was worth sharing, so that's why I shared it. And like I said last week, and here's a prime example, 2020 is shaping up to be quite a mess. I'm hoping 2020 is that catalyst for change, especially in this country, because there's a lot of things that really need to change, and I'd like to see that happen. So here's one piece of hope, and I'm, he's got the credibility as an experienced officer to help bring about that change. And he's got lots of free time because he's resigned from the force. So I hope that he's able to do that. So anyway, just a thought. I know some people don't like me getting off fountain pens, but you know what? I get off fountain pens because I want my country to be better, and I have a platform as small as it is, and I'm going to darn well use it. So, if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And what do you think? I brought up a lot of things. What's your favorite Pelikan? Do you like the broader nibs and the pilot vanishing point, or the narrower nibs? If you want to get more personal, do you maybe talk about how you have changed over the years? Some people get more liberal, some get more conservative, some just change in one little area. Maybe it was a big sudden change, maybe it was a slow gradual change. Let us know down in the comments. So as always, I want to thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.